Welcome to the first SDK Community of Users call. We're going to start off by giving a little bit of a roadmap update, and Corey, who's the blockchain project manager, product manager here on the Regen side, will be doing that for us. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for engagement and Q&A. So yeah, good to see everybody's faces here.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hello, hello. Aaron just hopped on. Welcome, Aaron.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, awesome.
Hello from Italy. Bye-bye. Hello.
Hi.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
This is Phoebe from Hong Kong. It's midnight here.
Thanks so much for joining, Phoebe. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, look forward to meet the rest of the community.
Yeah, fantastic. And as I noted in my direct message, I think at some point soon we'll see if we can't make a call time that's maybe have 2 call times or rotate or something, because I know it's pretty uncomfortable time to be getting on a call. Great. Well, I'll sort of kick us off. Welcome, everybody. Our intention is to host these calls monthly to complement the existing sort of weekly technical calls, to just have a broad venue to give roadmap updates and then to get feedback and engagement from the entire amazing community of SDK users. And so Regen Network will be hosting these calls. We're the new maintainers of the Cosmos SDK codebase, along with several other teams, but we're sort of an accountable party. And then lots of other people are participating, including many of the people on this call, which we're really grateful for. So just a brief word about Regen Network. We're building using the Cosmos SDK, and we're building a zone that's dedicated to ecological data, claims, and markets to help regenerate this beautiful planet that we live on together. So with all of that said, I'm going to pass it over to Corey, who's our blockchain product manager, and he's going to walk us through a quick presentation about where the roadmap is, and then we'll move into engagement, question and answer, etc. So with that, I'll pass it over to Corey.
Hey, thanks, Gregory. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to post the slides that I'll be walking through in here so that folks can see them as well. That should be linked to in the Zoom. And I may have to do something to set the permissions.
Access to global, please.
Yes, I'm doing that right now. Anyone with the link? All right, try refreshing that.
And Corey, I just made you host so that you can share your screen.
Great.
Great, looks great.
Fantastic. Can folks see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. So, what is new? Asterisk. New, this is the first time, as maybe Gregory had mentioned, that at least Regen has hosted a call like this. So the idea of like new and what is worth even talking about at this point is kind of like up for grabs. Like, what is the current state of what everyone knows about the status of the SDK is, I'm sure, like very different amongst all of the people on this call. So I've kind of tried to sum up what I think are the things that might be relevant to a large sort of amorphous group. But as we start to get into regular cycles with this calls, we can tailor that and sort of see what makes sense. But in terms of what I'll be walking through today, it'll be at a high level, an overview of what's going on with both the upcoming Stargate and Launchpad releases and sort of the statuses of those two. Those are the versions 039 and 040 of the Cosmos SDK. And then a couple of points at the end to some other things that we're sort of thinking about at Regen and amongst some of the other maintainers of the SDK outside of the scope of the Stargate release and kind of what may be happening either shortly following up from that. But yeah. So as a first piece, yeah, hello from Regen. As Gregory mentioned, we're one of the maintainers of the Cosmos SDK, and as a sort of like accountable party, my role as the blockchain product manager for Regen has also kind of shifted into leaning in a lot to the SDK team itself. So we've been hosting bi-weekly iteration plannings and also alternating bi-weekly architecture reviews. Those are an invite-based meeting, but if it is generally open to the community, so if folks are wanting to get more engaged or active in those, and particularly to be working on some of the more internal conversations about specific issues or architectural pieces that we're working on, the place to kind of ping us or get more involved in that would be on Discord. We're all in the Cosmos community Discord there. And certainly whenever there's like a larger relevant conversation for a bigger group in one of our architecture review calls, I'm usually posting the Zoom links to those calls on the Discord directly. So yeah, if you're sort of peeking in now for the first time and wanting to get a bit more actively plugged into what's going on, Discord is the place to find us, and we can happily slot folks into any of our regular meetings if it makes sense. So with Launchpad, just at a high level, the 039 release is out now. There were a few issues with it when we initially pushed it out, and we're shooting to have an 039.1 due sometime early next week. I'll go into some of the details about what happened there and sort of what's included within the Launchpad release in some of the next slides. And for Stargate, we're aiming for a mid to late August release candidate. Yeah, just to give people a sense on timing. Prior to that mid to late August timeline, Zaki is planning to be running some testnets, specifically with wallet integrations, and those will be targeting, I believe, a pre-release candidate version of the SDK against master to try and accelerate some of the testnet processes. Yeah, so we can start checking client integrations sooner rather than later. So onto Launchpad. Launchpad at a high level is meant to serve as the kind of final pre-Stargate stable release. There were a number of issues with the Cosmos SDK in the 038 line that was known to cause some stability problems around particularly IAVL and its pruning functionality. So this was, I think, the core impetus for us deciding to have some kind of stable release before the Stargate release. I think it was originally proposed by Ethan Frey that, hey, you know, we have this giant release with the Proto Migration and IBC and all of these pieces. It would be nice to give people something before that is a bit of an easier upgrade that just gets us to a stable place when it comes to the SDK. And so Launchpad is intended to be that. With the kind of decision to create the Launchpad release, Alessio led a new kind of the drafting of a new procedure around how we manage stable releases. So that can be found in the root of the SDK repo under this stable releases markdown file. And there's some language also updated in the contributing MD that you can see. And some of the changelog highlights from Launchpad for stuff that we were trying to put in this release were around, as I mentioned, reverting the IAVL pruning functionality that was introduced in IAVL 013. We had some small API breaking changes around how adding, this was basically a new functionality that we added where transaction simulation returns some gas info as well. This was a piece that Ethan Frey had led, which I think was a common UX concern. And it wasn't to the fullest potential of what he had wanted to tackle, but I think it added some better UX around predictable gas responses or gas estimations. And then there was also a minor client breaking change, some details around how the base account does custom marshaling and unmarshaling for pub keys. It was pub keys or addresses. I think it was actually for the pub keys. And that was a basically bad piece of software that was introduced in 038, which got fixed in Launchpad in our 039 release, and a few other minor bug fixes and improvements. So the original 039 release went out on the 20th of July. It was unusable, and we're kind of, as an SDK team, taking ownership and responsibility over this due to a failure in the release process. We created a new release process around this. It was our first time running through that whole sort of cycle. And unfortunately, what happened was a release candidate was tagged, some tests were run against it, a few PRs got merged after that fact, and a second release candidate was not issued. So therefore, that one of the last PRs that got pulled in after that release candidate required us to upgrade our Genesis migration. And since that wasn't included, you basically couldn't migrate successfully from 038 to 039. That's now been added thanks to Alex Bez. And we're now hoping to have a release candidate out for that in the next few days and tag a release for 039.1 sometime next week. You can join the Launchpad channel if you'd like to test this RC. Thanks to Bun, Band, and Pooch on Discord who were reporting the issue, and Alessio is working on a postmortem to give a bit more detailed description to what we kind of learned and changes that we're making to the release process so that this doesn't happen again in the future. So for those who aren't as familiar looking towards Stargate, this is a pretty big release. It's not just a significant release to the Cosmos SDK, but it's also in tandem the largest upgrade to the Cosmos Hub that it's seen debatably since launch. So the call today is kind of focused more on the chain developer side. So for folks other than let's say like hub validators or wallets integrating against the hub, this call in this community is more if you're working on a chain that's dependent on the Cosmos SDK, what does Stargate mean for you? So we've migrated all of the encoding in the Cosmos SDK to use protocol buffers now instead of Amino. That is a change that is coming with the Stargate version. Stargate also introduces the IBC module, and I think there's actually a few modules related to IBC that are introduced into the SDK with the 040 release. We've also refactored the application binaries as of the Stargate release to have a single application binary rather than Cosmos D and Cosmos CLI. There's just one. And then we've also added a secondary upgrade daemon or a supervisor that works closely with the Cosmos upgrade module, allowing for sort of, non-destructive upgrades and continually monitoring process of your actual daemon. And then in addition to that, we've added a new test util package for in-process integration tests and kind of dually serving as a testnet testing framework. Thanks to Bez for working on this. And I think it's important that as we're making all of these large changes across the application for how encoding works, we wanted to make sure that we had a really robust testing framework, particularly on the integration tests and testing all of the CLI commands and such to make sure that one, all of the things in the past don't break, and two, all of the new things work as they should. So specifically on the protobuf migration, if you're trying to get a conceptual overview to what this includes, there are 3 ADRs that you should be looking at. That's ADR 19, 20, and 21, which each cover respectively the state migration, the transaction migration, and the query migration from Amino to protobuf encoding. In terms of tracking the progress of all of this work, we've wrapped up all of the encoding state migration, so that's completed. On the query side, all the query services and CLI commands have been wrapped up as well, and we're currently underway with gRPC gateway, so a new REST service that's being added, which basically serves as a proxy to all of the gRPC, to the gRPC interface for querying. And on the transaction signing path, that is still in progress. This is, I'd say, a piece that has been consistently difficult for us to estimate, but we're on the last mile for it, thankfully. There was a last few alt CLI commands that I think even today, after I had drafted up this slide deck yesterday, have now just gotten merged. And the next thing that we're looking at for the transaction signing path is migrating the legacy REST endpoints to handle converting the amino JSON, which is what they currently are expecting, to using protobuf internally for all of the state encoding. And then we're also in progress, and I think this is pretty close to being done, creating protobuf Genesis structs and allowing for Genesis to all be protobuf compatible. In terms of breaking changes that are worth talking about for SDK developers, all of your modules should be rewritten using the new protobuf encoding. If you're looking for, we're going to be working on documentation and guides for how to do this in a more kind of directly outlined way. But if you're looking to get a head start on that, there's a series of meta issues that you can view on our project board. One for querying, one for transaction, one for state encoding. And those basically, in those meta issues, will enumerate every internal module on the SDK. So if you want to see how Gov got migrated or how staking got migrated as an example for how to migrate your own custom module, that'd be a nice place to look. I can try and share some links after this, specifically to those meta issues as well. And yeah, once we kind of got the core development work done, we're going to be working on a bunch of migration guides and updating all of the tutorials to the Stargate version of the SDK. And on the client-facing side, while we're adding all of these new features, we're not actually going to be deprecating the amino JSON-based REST endpoints in the Stargate release. That will be deprecated in a future release. So kind of know that those will be at some point having an end of life. But with the Stargate release, for clients that are integrating against your chain, they can still use all of the currently existing amino JSON REST endpoints that they're using today. But what we are adding is essentially two new APIs, one which is native gRPC, and then the other one is a set of REST endpoints generated from gRPC gateway. So the longer term goal will be to fully deprecate the legacy amino-based REST endpoints in favor of gRPC gateway, but for now we'll basically have the three of these living in parallel as of the Stargate release. And on the IBC side, at least from Regen's perspective, we're not too active in the IBC roadmap and conversations in the day-to-day. So there may be other folks on this call who can speak to this in more detail if folks are wanting more detailed understanding of what's going on in IBC. But at a high level, there was a recent edition of this ADR 001 on cross-transfer source tracing. So documenting how you can actually understand and see where a coin originated from if you're dealing with a coin on your chain that came originally from another chain. And the majority of the remaining work for IBC is still dependent on the latest version of Tendermint getting merged in. So Marco currently has a PR that's basically trying to track master of Tendermint to speed up that process. And beyond Stargate, some of the things at a high level that we're looking at, one is support for the Rosetta API. There's an issue tracking this, and it's kind of an ongoing conversation, still figuring out exactly what the priority of this is, where we'll slot it in, and
What's the issue number there?
Sorry.
8. Thank you. Sorry, Corey.
Which issue number?
6831.
Yes, thank you.
6831.
Sorry, Corey.
Yeah, these blue, I should have said all of the blue against the blue-green isn't the best contrast. Yeah, so there's this question about support for Rosetta API, which there's an ongoing conversation about. Then also IAVL, which is a piece of software that currently the kind of person most knowledgeable of the IAVL stack is on the Tendermint team, but at Regen, we're slowly going to be taking a closer, keener look into IAVL and coming up with a more of a longer term roadmap for how it relates to the SDK after Stargate. One thing that's happening that's currently underway is we've been speaking with Martin from the Foam team, who has been wanting to prioritize this issue around exposing a gRPC API through IAVL or from IAVL. This is something that they're wanting to build for Kepler, which is the Haskell-based Cosmos SDK. And so that's something that we've been largely in support of. And yeah, the development of that is being led by Foam at the moment, though folks from the SDK and Tendermint team are kind of helping review and get that work merged in. And then outside of those two pieces, some of the things that Regen is excited about sort of folding back into the SDK is mostly around work that we had been doing prior to the protocol buffer migration. Those are the first pieces on our to-do list. So there's a fee grant message authorization module that a lot of work had been done on earlier this year and towards the end of last year, that some pieces need to get upgraded there to make it fully compatible with how all of the new Stargate protobuf functionality works. But that will be hopefully like a great module for SDK users more broadly, enabling you to basically delegate fee payment abilities to another account. Similarly, the groups module that we had been working on, which has a simple kind of voting and election mechanism to allow for sub-key management. So a bunch of keys can aggregate together on one account and have a voting procedure for message authorization. And then as part of the groups module work that we were doing, Regen had also begun development on a distinct kind of ORM module that allows for secondary indices. That's something that we're, I think, going to be excited to lean back into once Stargate is out the door. And yeah, that's sort of where our heads are at. Yeah, at this point, I think I'd like to sort of open up. We have some time left for questions. Yeah, if folks have to go and we're running out of time, people can also leave questions or comments directly in the chat. But
yeah, and I'll keep this. We'll keep the room open. I think probably I'm going to turn the recording off for the conversation phase of this, and I'll stick around and leave the room open in case conversations kind of keep going, and do my best to take notes if there's pertinent things that need to get fed back. We'll be a little permeable about the 30-minute mark, but want to also respect people's time. So yeah, looking forward to hearing, feedback or questions or,
One important breaking change from is the new queuing migration. And I'm not sure if what's mentioned, but it's also pretty much breaking.
the new what migration?
The queuing migration.
Keyring.
So
Keyring.
the queuing migration.
Okay. Sorry, yeah,
So
I missed that one. Thanks.
From our experience at Ethermint, this was pretty much a problem for us, because we were based on a commit and master. And there's an issue on the SDK's 6500 that is kind of important to document how it's the process for creating a new key that uses another algorithm other than the SecP algorithm that is supported by Tendermint. So yeah, this is a pretty much breaking change for folks using the SDK as well, and I think it's worth mentioning that.
And is that just if they were using a different key format or?
Yes, so Ethermint uses the key that it's supported by Go Ethereum. So that's the main reason why we have to, in the first place, create a new support algorithm options for the keyring. And then when it was migrated, the default algorithm was hard coded. So I had to patch that on the SDK master.
And this is
But it's still some.
the 25519 keys, correct? For accounts?
Yeah, for
Okay,
Ethereum.
cool. Thank you.
For Ethermint. Yeah, so this is like a pending thing that I need to circle around with Alessio afterwards, but it's pretty much documentation issues that needs to be resolved. Like a guide, so to say, more than documentation.
Yeah, I think you opened an issue about it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's 6,500.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Would be curious to hear if there are what other developers or teams out there are would foresee themselves facing that same issue.
Hi, this is Rick. I would almost certainly have that. If the existing SDK supports multiple keys, I mean, we were looking at I guess it's SR25519 for one of my clients. So if you've removed that support by sort of inadvertently,
yeah,
then we would be impacted by that.
Cool.
Hi guys, I'm Swit from Band. So yeah, so we ran a testnet a couple weeks ago using 0.38, 0.5, and yeah, ran exactly into that issue. Like 30% of the validators got memory leak, and then the node crashed, and then they cannot restart because they have pruning syncable. So yeah, we plan to launch another testnet probably next week using 39. We also discovered that migration issue. Ban is one of our engineers. So yeah, so we plan to launch the next testnet with 39.1 RC. So hopefully that doesn't break.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I have another unrelated question. I saw an issue on Tendermint and SDK like open for a long time about like transaction priority, about like check TX return like priority of the transaction beyond just the mean gas price that each node set independently. Is that something on the roadmap? Because I feel like that's pretty important to order transaction by gas price or things like that.
You know what issue number that was?
I don't recall it. I can try to search for it.
Well, see you next one. Thank you for this.
Yeah, Victor, thank you.
And so while you are searching, the other question is, if you're going to be on 39.5, does that mean your next testnet will have IBC in it?
No, 39 doesn't have IBC yet, right?
It's 40 that will have IBC in it.
Okay. Yeah, we have banned that IBC though during the hackathon.
Yeah,
sure. We downgraded it back. Yeah.
Cool. Other questions while he's drumming up that issue number?
Yeah, I noticed one of the things on the roadmap for post Stargate is the subkeys work and the group module and message authorization type stuff.
Yeah.
I know there's been quite a bit of work done on that particular piece of infrastructure. Is that something that we're just kind of blocked on these other things and then we'll finalize work there and that should be relatively quick, or are we anticipating sort of a longer release cycle for that as well?
We're really hoping that that's going to be a quick turnaround. The pieces were mostly done before the Proto transaction. migration started, and we made a decision to basically postpone that work. We thought that the protobuf transaction migration, first of all, was going to take a lot less time, but we knew that new modules would need to get, any modules were going to need to get migrated, and if we added them with amino support, we would just need to migrate them right away. So we made a decision to postpone that. I'm not sure that was necessarily the best decision. Maybe we should have just tried to get those done before we really got deep into protobuf, but it's kind of water under the bridge.
Yeah.
So, and actually most of them have been migrated already to protobuf. They're just, there have been other changes in the meantime. So we're hoping it's going to be pretty quick turnaround.
Awesome. That's great news. There's a number of use cases for those features. And I know I've talked to you guys about how you're going to use them at Regen. For us over at Akash, delegating the ability to control a specific deployment to a key is a use case that we'd really like to have. So anyway, yeah, looking forward to that feature, and I think a lot of chains are going to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that too, and it's it's one of the big things that we're, in addition to finishing up those modules, adding additional support for subkeys is something we're looking, like just within the ecosystem, is something we're looking to get it in, pick up for the end of this year. By hopefully we'll see other things that other pieces of software that will make that easier, whether that's on the client side or additional module support. So
Great.
Cool. Any more questions?
Just for the next community call, this was very focused on Stargate and didn't really dig into IBC or other things. And I apologize I came late, but I will watch the recording. But what's the process for getting things on the agenda or topics for the community call?
At this point, I mean, this is, as I mentioned earlier, the first one that we've had. Yeah. Certainly, I think having like do you think that having this as a forum where there's a kind of community created agenda and sort of a more open discussion about those topics, like is what you're wanting to do to discuss stuff that's already on the roadmap, that's already being worked on and underway? Because we do have bi-weekly architecture review calls where, like, I'm wondering if that is a better format, or if actually this format should allow for open sort of larger agenda items and conversation as well.
So I like the format of focused on a topic, presenting the topic. That seems good. The question is just how do we figure out how are we figuring out what the next topic will be? Now, presumably Stargate's going to be the main topic for the next the next month or two at the very least. But like on next things there, the after Stargate, IBC would then be present on the system, and there's the ramp up of IBC, and some of that has a lead time. And so people doing the integrations to IBC, we kind of want to make sure is started overlapping with as Stargate rolls out. So that was the only reason why I was paying attention here, or rather why I was thinking about what goes on to the agenda in the next several months.
Cool. Well, I think that maybe the thing to happen would be to, how about this? How about if, let's say we're having this next call in 1 month, then in 2 weeks time, we do kind of like a call out on Discord to see if there's anything that people would like to see specifically addressed. Is that kind of what you're talking about? And then we have ample.
Yeah, that absolutely. Yep.
And then we have kind of ample time. And if, let's say, the stuff that you're working on is like super relevant and you're wanting to kind of like do a little thing, then we incorporate that into the presentation, and then you get like a little slot or something. Or if IBC has like a whole bunch of stuff, then maybe, maybe Fede and some folks from the IBC team just like lead the whole call that month. Is that kind of what you're saysaying?
Yeah, exactly. That there's sort of, there needs to be a Stargate segment regardless. I know there's lots of other things happening in the space, And so I want to make sure that people know, and this isn't just for me. I want to make sure that people know in the community if they've got something to talk about, who to reach out to get it on the agenda. So having it in Discord a couple weeks before next, it seems like a fine way to do that.
Great. Yeah, Gregory, let's just bookmark that and make sure that we throw that into the process for these calls then.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll do a HackMD or a Google Doc that's
Perfect.
open, and we'll socialize that, and people can comment and throw stuff in, and we'll just use that to generate the agenda.
Would that be in the Launchpad channel or another one?
Probably just probably the Cosmos SDK public channel.
I'll do my best to cross-post it to places where I think
fine.
relevant people are, but I think that for this venue, we're trying, like, all users of the Cosmos SDK, so the Cosmos SDK channel will be our go-to, like, it'll always be there. And I think there's a complex relationship with, other Cosmos ecosystem products that all interoperate. And so we're obviously going to be permeable and want to have those conversations because they're important and they drive development and integrations. But sometimes we may also decide to spin up other, sort of more focused calls for people that may end up, who knows, reporting back to this community call, what happened, etc. So we'll do our best to sort of create a good rhythm and facilitate that in an open way. And, please lean in if you have ideas, critiques, or, would like to host another call that will complement and deepen what the conversation's here. Just let us know. We'll publicize it and, cross-link and just try to, make sure everybody has access to the right forums and fountains of information, I guess.
So I have a quick question that sort of came up from what Dean said. And sorry if this is well known and obvious to everyone else on the call, but is IBC the first case of a module that'll be included in the SDK that has a development community separate from the SDK?
I don't think it's
Upgrade
separate.
module is an example of that.
I'm sorry, you cut off. What was the name?
I think the upgrade module is already an example of that.
So there are other examples, but I don't think of the IBC as being a separate community. I mean, that's the mostly the Berlin team doing the heavy lifting on the coding, and it's pretty integral to Cosmos SDK.
Yeah, I mean, that was poorly phrased. I was looking for better phrasing, just because. So my question is that module in the same repo?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then is the upgrade module also? So are those all in the same repo, right? All those modules.
Yes.
And then the group module and the subkeys module and all of this authorization stuff is going to be another example of that. And this idea of having development teams that are working specifically on modules and then sort of integrating them into the larger system is kind of how we planned to do this, I believe.
Yeah, there is, I think that from my understanding, Bez is one person who had wanted to do some thinking about some sort of a module registry. And I think once we get all of the Stargate stuff cleaned up and wrapped up, we should be having a conversation about how we enable modules outside of the SDK repo or just sort of conceptually being aligned on where that fits in and what makes something worthy of being within the SDK repo. Does something have to be in the SDK repo for it to be shared and used by the community? Is there a registry? That sort of stuff. As I see it, there have been conversations about that have happened in the past, but it's not, there isn't the cleanest answer to it. I think that in practice, what happens today is that if there are modules outside of as I understand it, the only module that is used by other chains, that is used by multiple chains, that is outside of the SDK repo is probably Cosmwasm.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a follow-on question, which I think is also relevant and in scope. So I've built a chain on Kepler called Purple Chain. And one of the issues that I was sort of anticipating or concerned about was there's just the Cosmos SDK, and then like there's Kepler, and they don't really share modules, even though I'm not entirely sure. I mean, there's sort of a sort of obvious technical reason why they can't share modules, but from a design perspective, it's not clear to me. Is there a desire to have modules shared across languages or not?
From my understanding, regardless of whether we're thinking about sharing modules across language, the first question would be, is there even a desire to have, for a given chain, it to be implemented in multiple implementations, like one in Kepler and one in Cosmos SDK. And it is my understanding that I personally don't really get exactly the reasons why one would want to do that, but I see the decisions that we've made around exposing gRPC API from IAVL, which Barton from Foam has been pushing forward, one of the Kepler developers, as in the direction of enabling that. So yeah, I guess my understanding is that I see that as a little fuzzy terrain. I don't personally have the strongest opinion or reasoning about that, but I do see that the decisions that are there are some decisions that are being made right now that would move us in that direction should we want to pursue that.
Yeah, so just to give a very concrete example for people, if I write, for example, we use the bank module in Kepler, that is, supposed to have feature parity with the Cosmos SDK module.
Is that okay?
And they are supposed to, I should be able to, in the abstract, create a chain where one client is in Haskell and one client is in Go. But more importantly, I should be able to take a module from Go that already does everything I want it to do and include that into my Haskell only otherwise chain. So for example, I mean, IBC is an obvious example of a case where you might want to do this. Like, why re-implement IBC if it has the exact same functionality if I can just include the module?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of technical issues to making that a reality. And I have not looked into the specifics of how to call Go code from Haskell, but I would imagine it involves C bindings. And generally that stuff is kind of ugly and a little bit frustrating. I know that Dean and the folks over at Agoric have worked on some JavaScript interoperability with the Cosmos SDK. That is how swing set is currently integrated. Is that correct, Dean?
So, yes. I mean, it's compiled together with the Cosmos SDK that has our JavaScript engine as part of it.
Yeah, so Rick, if you're interested in that, there's some existing methods to do this. They're technically challenging, but possible.
So Rick, you and I had talked about this on a call recently or a few months ago. And I think what we settled on is that the easy way to do this is with RPC calls. And I think what you basically need to set up is some sort of subset of the ABCI protocol that would allow kind of some modules in another language to be sort of like child modules of another chain, so that you're using basically a subset of ABCI to just send over, hey, these are the messages I want this sort of this child chain to use, and this is the gas, and that sort of child chain that is using these modules that are written in another language doesn't actually do any of the signature verification or the transaction related stuff. It just kind of gets some messages, sends some responses back, and then you can have that interoperability. And it would be sort of the same model that's used for CosmWasm. CosmWasm just receives some bytes that it processes, and then it can send some messages back to be processed by its sort of host. So if you have like a host and a child chain, I think that you can do that without needing to do all the kind of like C bindings and, you know, FFI and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that conversation. But does protobuf help with that at all? Does having everything be exported as protobufs?
I think it does, because what I'm proposing, I don't know how familiar you are with the way CosmWasm does processes messages, but CosmWasm will, the response of a CosmWasm script is basically messages that can get processed by the router of its host. And so if you have like a child chain that returns some protobuf encoded messages, those messages can get processed by the host as if they were kind of within the same process. So the protobuf encoding helps in that it just allows everybody to have the same set of types and allows, you know, an easier communication between different processes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so thank you. So I think that path, now that you sort of jogged my memory, makes sense. And I guess one of the things that I'm interested in is maybe seeing that. I don't quite know how to engage the community to formalize that or move that forward, especially if Agoric already has some interoperability solution and CosmWasm already has one. And there's now Kepler and Cosmos SDK, just to be explicit. If there was like a unified sort of model there, I think it would be really helpful.
We would certainly be.
I would suggest you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I suggest you open an issue in the Cosmos SDK repo, and we'll talk about it and maybe turn it into an ADR.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I could easily imagine being delighted with better integration support.
Great. Well, we've run quite a bit past the 30-minute mark.
This is good though. Thank you.
Anything burning from anybody else, or should we call this a wrap for round one?
Yeah, I think this has been great. If you have you know, questions or ideas, again, we'll be socializing a HackMD or a Google Doc for folks to, you know, note conversations that you'd like to have next month. In the meantime, Corey, do you mind reposting in the Cosmos SDK channel the invitation to the bi-weekly architecture meetings for those who want to jump in there? And so that's another venue to, you know, get engaged with the ongoing conversation.
And we'll be having one of those on Friday. The next one will be Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Berlin time.
And yeah, as Aaron noted, I think the best way to engage if you have questions is to, you know, do a PR in the Cosmos SDK repo with your needs.
An issue, starting with an issue.
Starting with an issue. Starting with an issue, and then, you know, we can escalate that to ADRs and sort of run through the process, and then hopefully feed those things back and report them to the community here as the conversation goes, and hopefully that will sort of create a good sort of robust, information-rich environment for everybody to collaborate in. So, yeah.
Thank you guys for really.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Thank you very much,
everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you guys.